Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Therapist Theater. My name is Josh Treese. I'm your host. I'm a practicing therapist in Music City, USA, and every week, a guest therapist, counselor, or social worker joins me in the theater to talk about a movie that we've seen and what relationship or mental health issues that it highlights. How are you guys doing this week? I wanted to spend just a second telling you about a new resource that I have recently discovered. I know it's been around for a little while, but I was introduced to it in the past couple of weeks by Tim Ferriss. I don't know Tim Ferriss. I should say I was just watching a YouTube video that he put out on how he uses writing to improve his thinking. And he is a guy who, a lot like Neil Gaiman, enjoys analog writing, I guess you could say, rather than tippy-tapping out on a keyboard onto a computer. He pulls out the old pen and paper and writes a lot on that. And so in this video, he was kind of walking through several different notebooks that he uses and what he uses them for and how he uses them. And one of the ones that he used was called the 5-Minute Journal. And the 5-Minute Journal is an actual hard cover journal that you can get, wherein its format is designed to help you supposedly within 5 minutes, although maybe because I'm a very long-winded person, it usually takes me a little while longer, but supposedly within 5 minutes, develop a journaling practice every day. And in the video, when he was kind of introducing his usage of it, what I was really struck by was how it employed the use of both reflection and intention. And the questions that it used were very directive and guiding. And so just before Leanne and I went on vacation, I started using it. And the questions that it asks are, like I said, pretty simple. List 3 things that you're grateful for, 3 things that would make today great, daily affirmations, so like I am, two affirmations, and you do that practice in the morning, and then in the evening you come back and revisit it, 3 amazing things that happened today, and how could I have made today even better? 2 ways that you could have done that. So in the morning, you've got a gratitude practice, you've got an intention practice, what would make today great, a time for affirmation, and in the evening, you've got your reflective practices, 3 amazing things that happened today, and what could I have done to make today even better? How could I have made today even better? Is a place that for me, it has allowed me to kind of critically think, and usually what goes there in mine ends up the next morning when I come back to it, having a great effect on how I spend my next day. So this is a practice that I've been keeping for about 2 weeks now, and I've found it to be really helpful. And I know in my supervision that I've had because of my practice, I think it was in my supervision of last week or the session before that. But then also just in talking with Leanne lately, one of the things that I've been struck by is that it's really tough to get into a rhythm during the pandemic because you can't establish a norm. Because you think, okay, I'm finally getting down how to kind of live out my days while in social distancing, or you think, okay, so these are the tasks I'm going to do, and then something changes, and so it's really tough. I know a lot of people are experiencing sleep issues. A lot of people are experiencing just loneliness, and so it's really tough to develop a norm. So this practice of the 5-minute journal for me has helped me to use reflection and intention to go inside of myself, and rather developing a bunch of hardline rules, In other words, responding out of fear by trying to take control of my day. Rather than doing that, it's helped me to go the opposite way and use intention. Because when you respond out of fear by trying to control, you're still in a reactive state. So this has helped me to achieve a proactive state of deciding what I want my days to look like. So it's a resource. They're not like a sponsor of the show or anything. They're not giving me anything. It's just something that I've really enjoyed over the past couple of weeks and that I'm going to continue to use every day, the 5-minute journal. So you guys check that out. Tell me what you think about it. And if it becomes something that's helpful for you, hit me up on Instagram at Therapist Theater and tell me what you think. Tell me how it's been helping. And I look forward to hearing from you on that. Got a great guest this week on the show, a returning guest. So we have a small group of people that are returning from season 1 to the theater. This is Amie Steinbach. Amie was, like me, a graduate of the Marriage and Family Counseling and Therapy program at Tribeca, but she's up in Ohio right now. And so got a chance to hear from her, and we ended up talking about a movie that both of us saw for the first time while we were in one of our classes in grad school. As a part of that curriculum, the professor had us watch that, and so we had a chance to talk about that. I know you guys are going to like that, so let's go ahead and lower the lights, raise the curtain, and start the previews. Welcome to the theater. Amie, welcome back to the theater.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Oh my gosh. This will be the first time that I am doing a remote interview with video. So just being able to see you while doing this is such... What's funny though is that I had planned on doing it just audio today, but there was something like as we were just chatting at the beginning where I was just like, this feels so disconnected. I need to figure out some way to have some kind of connection that's more than just the audio. So
yeah.
Technology to the rescue.
I know, and it is nice. And since I was on the show with you before, it's really nice to come on again and then be able to see.
Yes, I think you know what? I might just switch to doing it this way. Because I mean, it's crazy that I have gotten a chance to meet and talk with so many great people, but other than asking them for a promotional picture to use since the pandemic, I haven't been able to like meet people and see them. And
no, it's a good idea. I love this. I love that you can see your guests.
Yeah, it's cool. So we're having you back on. It's round 2. And really, I think I've only had 3 other guests for round 2. So you're in an elite club. It's not an elite club. Yeah. But really the only reason I'm saying that is because in those cases, like, and this will be the 4th time, we already have talked about your why therapy, which is where I start every conversation with. So we're going to kind of like make some adjustments. In the recent couple of episodes, I've added in something because I noticed that I was kind of asking about it anyway. And that is just that I would love to hear if before you entered into therapy as a client or into it as getting your degree in it or practicing it, what your concept of therapy or a therapist was before you got like formally introduced to it.
You know, and interestingly enough, I really honestly didn't have any preconceived notions of what therapy was before I went to grad school, because I just kind of figured at the time, I'm like, I knew it was a place where you go to see a skilled professional, right, that would help you with difficulties you were having in your life, and that they'd give you some kind of direction and boom, you'd be healed.
But did you really think that it would be like kind of that quick kind of, almost like a one and done appointment where like, here's my problem, doc. And then they would say, take 2 of these, call me in the morning, and then you'd be good.
I mean, I knew it was I knew it was a little bit of a more in-depth process, but I didn't really realize the in-depth journey of it until after I actually went through grad school and then became a client myself in therapy. When I went to grad school, I really started to understand like the depth of what therapy was. I mean, that it's not just me going in and, listening to advice. It's somebody else telling me, tell me about yourself and tell me what you're dealing with, and helping me gain insight. I was always under the impression of, oh, this person's going to give me the insight that I need. No.
Really, like they had the answers and you just had to seek the right person to give you the right answers.
Yeah. And I think too, I didn't really understand the connection that you can have with a therapist. I didn't really understand the therapeutic relationship at all. And that was definitely something I learned about the depth of it.
Yeah, that's something I've tried to hone into on the show as best I could. Like, as many different types of people that there's as many different types of therapists. And in the same way that you connect with some people, but you don't connect with others, you might connect with one therapist more so than you would connect with another. And so if you go to see a therapist, I always it breaks my heart to hear stories of people who had not even like neutral, but bad experiences in therapy with a therapist. It breaks my heart to hear it. But I try to encourage people, like, as a therapist myself, if one of my clients were to feel like they couldn't connect with me, obviously I'd want to know, can you tell me more about it? Because is it something I'm doing consciously, unconsciously? But also my main goal is I want to get you the best help you can get. And if it's not with me, but if I could maybe, hear about what you're looking for and maybe help you find somebody, I'd be okay with that. My ego is not so tied to this that like, I think I can help every single person.
Yes. And I experienced that firsthand, actually. I went through many therapists, that were good, but it just didn't feel that authentic connection that I needed to be able to move through what I was moving through in my life. And I did finally find that person. And it's like, you have an aha moment of like, oh my God, this is what it's supposed to feel like with a person.
How do you know, like, what was it inside of you that you experienced when it wasn't clicking?
That is a good question. Just something just felt off for me. I'm a really highly intuitive person. So I think for me, it was just that feeling of like, just no, there's no, I guess I would call, I know it kind of sounds crazy, but no, like warm, fuzzy feeling of like.
I don't think it sounds crazy. I mean, that just sounds like connection. Like you didn't feel like there was a connection made. And what I'm trying to do is to kind of like give maybe the listeners like some kind of thing that they could go, oh, wait, I'm feeling that. And it's not because I'm crazy. It's not because I don't know how to do relationships. It's because my gut is telling me something that's worthwhile to listen to.
Yeah, it was really my gut telling me. It was just more of like a nudge, I guess I would call it, just a nudge that something just didn't feel right, that every time I went in, that the conversations were never really going anywhere. I didn't feel like this, I felt like the same questions were being asked, but yet we were really not moving past that. And then when I got the right person, I felt like there was a connection of, oh, it's almost like relatability.
Yeah.
That therapist that relates because of what they've kind of gone through too. I think that had a big factor for me of like, this person's been through some stuff that I've been through. And that's really that's probably what was the biggest thing for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that like, so I've had a few guests come on that have said, like, I'm thinking back to Jeremy, who covered the movie Rocket Man, where he said, I'd been to a few therapists who I kind of had to explain, this is him saying it, what it was like being gay so they could begin to help me. And then when I went to a therapist who was gay, it was like I didn't have to teach him the language to then help me. So it felt like I could just jump straight into the work. And so I think that sounds kind of like what you're saying when you
Yeah.
found somebody who, I don't want to say could identify, but I guess that is part of it, but maybe who could just like identify with what it is you were going through a little bit. But I also think that there is
Authenticity, I think it was a big part of it for me
but
too.
I also I don't want to lay that out there as like the only determining factor, because I know that
No.
a
Yeah.
lot of therapy, like we're taught self-disclosures for the client. So some therapists don't put their stuff out there, and that's not
Right.
bad. That's
Right.
just what they choose. I do think kind of what you were saying, the warm and fuzzies or the connection. Like
Mm-hmm.
I know that there have been times where I've met somebody personally, like somebody that I thought could be a new friend, sit down, grab coffee. And in the course of that time, they don't ask me a single question. I get up an hour later feeling lonely and walking out going, what just happened? And it's because I felt like I was asking all the questions, and they weren't interested in me.
That's it.
I don't think that that's necessarily like a guide for therapy, because it's their job to ask
Right.
questions and to not bring their stuff to you. But I think if your gut feels connection, that's great.
Yeah.
However it is that's looking like, and you'll know. And if your gut feels disconnection, that's something to pay attention to.
And that's basically really what it is for me, just because I am so intuitive. So I just kind of knew.
Mm-hmm. I think, I tell my clients all the time, I want to be your biggest advocate for trusting yourself. So like, I think in that case, just saying that again to people, like, listen, don't be afraid to trust yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you feel your body or your spirit or your gut or whatever it is you want to call it, telling you something, what would happen if you listened?
Right.
What would happen if you listened? So you had this idea, this conception that therapy would be like, all right, I'm going to find the right person. They're going to give me the right answers. Everything's going to get ironed out. And they all lived happily ever after.
Yeah. It was very basic. I guess I really didn't understand and a big thing for me too, is I didn't really think that I would experience I don't want to say pain, but some of that you really go through. I'm just like, oh, this is hard. Like this is, and the hard work that you have to do. I didn't understand any of that.
Yeah. I remember thinking when I started therapy, the end of it would be me being less affected. Like less things would bother me. Basically, I wouldn't feel as much as I thought that I did. And then in the end, I have one friend who says therapy helps you feel better. It doesn't help you feel better like you're always happy, but your ability to experience and process and articulate your feelings is better.
Mm-hmm.
And so it feels like all of a sudden you have more feelings. But that's how he has articulated it. And I was like, oh yeah, yeah. So it sounds like maybe you were thinking like, okay, there's not going to be so much of that, so much as it is I say, hey, this is happening. And then they say, you should do this.
Mm-hmm. I definitely felt a lot more, if I may put it that way.
So since being a client, since going through training, since doing like internships and postmasters volunteering and all of that, how has your concept of therapy changed?
I think for me, my concept of therapy has just changed into the fact that it's not about the destination. It's all about the journey. The fact of the matter that, along the journey, you have somebody who's going to, just like you said, be your biggest advocate for trusting yourself, but also be your biggest cheerleader to get you where you want to go, and that you're not alone. And that, I like to think of it as like climbing a mountain. You've got your therapist with you, who's your guide, and they've got all their tools and their packs and stuff on their back, and you've got all your tools and your packs on your back. But, when you're pushing up the mountain, the only person that's going to really be doing the hard work is you. And I think a lot of people have a misconception that our therapists does the work for us, but really in reality, it's us.
Yeah.
And it's our lives. They don't go home with us.
Mm-hmm.
We're the one that has to go home with ourselves. And so we have to be willing to do the hard work, and they're there helping and pushing us and encouraging us along the way.
That sounds like it is an introduction to boundaries.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And I think that therapy was probably the first place that I experienced boundaries, like with my therapist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did too. I didn't really, and I kind of struggled a lot with boundaries in my life. That was always a difficulty for me. And I think being in therapy really helped me understand that, oh, this person's not going to fix me. I need to fix me.
Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it's this delicate, not even balance. It's the relationship. It's a therapy relationship. They're not going to fix me, but they're also not leaving me.
Right. They're going to be there with you while you're working on yourself.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, I just thought of a good analogy. It's very much like if you're like lifting weights, if you're benching, like you may have somebody there commenting on your form. They're not lifting the weight. They're telling you the best way to lift the weight, but you gotta push that bar up. Like that's.
Yep.
I don't know if a metaphor has ever been worsely matched with a person than me, like giving a weightlifting metaphor. Yeah. Maybe I'll show you something in comic books or a superhero movie. That'll fit a little bit better.
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you think how much of that change in concept came from education versus experience, both as a client or as a therapist?
I think it was a little bit of both for me. I would say it was a 50-50 on that one, because the education helped me to understand what we do, what our job is as a therapist. And one of the things that I struggled with in supervision, and I'm very, very honest about it, was the fact that I wanted to be able to give my clients advice. And that's the thing, because I came in with that thinking of like, oh, they're going to give me the advice that I need, and I'm going to take that, and my life's going to be good. I'll be able to work it out. But when I realized that that's not our job as a therapist, our job is to sit with our clients and listen to what they say, and help them move towards insight, but not be the ones to tell them exactly everything. That was like a big life changer for me. Like I had no idea.
Yeah. I've got that in me too. And I think every time I would sense like, oh, I think I'm saying too much. I think I'm doing the work basically.
Right.
If I kind of like step back, and I hate to say this, but it would happen more after the session than in the middle of it. But if I could kind of step back, what I noticed was like something popped up inside of me that thought, they'll think more of me if I give them this answer. Like they'll be impressed with my knowledge, or they'll think I'm cool, or whatever it is. And to kind of like weave that in with the, like as a client in therapy, I did a butt ton of work and I'm a different person because of it. And if I think about it, like that's denying that client the work.
Exactly.
I'm taking their change from them.
Right. And we're basically doing it. We're not empowering them to figure it out on their own, because it's almost kind of like when, I can't think of a metaphor for it, but it's almost kind of like, just we're doing all the heavy lifting, like you said, in the analogy with the weights. And I think if we take away, it's like somebody working out to lose weight, right? They're going to feel better if they do it on their own. But if you're the one that's always doing it for them and telling them this and that, they're not going to feel good about it because they didn't do it. You did it for them.
And what's interesting about that is the working out and the exercising metaphor, there is so much that you could read or learn or study about it. How many magazines are devoted to that kind of thing? How many YouTube videos could you pull up? How many books? But you stuff all of that stuff inside your head. No change happens till you get on the treadmill, till you pick up the weight, till you get out on the street and run.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we're like giving them all that information, but not letting them do their own running.
Yes, that's a good way to put it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember, I had this client a long time ago that I would tell my supervisor, I can't get a word in. Like, this guy starts at the top of the hour, and at 2 minutes till, I've got to stand up from my seat and go to the door and open it. And I've only said a few words in between to get him out.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember one time he said something about, I'm just not sure that like our sessions are working. Like, I don't really feel like I'm getting much from them.
Mm-hmm.
My supervisor had told me something of this, but I think what I said to him was like, well, yeah, you never let me talk. So like, to use an old trope from recovery, your line of thinking got you into this, your line of thinking can't get out, but all you're doing is like vomiting out your thoughts during the session, and you're not asking me about any of them. And I'd love to help you, but I just can't get a word in. And that's like the opposite kind of the metaphor that we're using. But if we're taking up all the space in the room,
then they don't have the power to take some space to be able to find what they need to find in themselves
and wrestle with it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, like, to answer that question a little bit more, I think that for me, it was a little bit of both, because I learned the education of what it's like, for the patterns, the different kinds of things. But then when I was in the room and I was actually experiencing that head on with a client, I mean, that was like a whole new ball game.
Yeah, it's really different. I mean, you can know all about modalities and worldviews and interventions,
theories.
and then you get into the room and you're just like, this is not, they're not doing what the case studies did in the book.
Yeah, complete opposite.
Mm-hmm.
So it was definitely 50-50 for me.
That's interesting. Yeah. I mean, I think I like asking guests these things because I want to kind of hone in for listeners that therapists, counselors, social workers, mental health professionals are people, and we're in this for a reason. And a good therapist will not treat a client from a top-down position, from like a do everything I say without question. Here's a lecture when you come in. It's really a good therapist really tries to help you discover what's already inside of you.
Yeah. And when I did, I think me as a therapist, it was more like an experiential therapist. So I liked to use a lot of experiential techniques and exercises and stuff to help my client work through those things and gain that insight through doing things.
Yeah. Yeah. Some of the biggest aha moments I had as a client were through experiential techniques.
Mm-hmm.
And I was telling my wife sometime, I can't remember when, about one of those specific kind of interventions and how like it hit me so hard. I left therapy, went to a coffee shop, and literally wrote down as much about it as I could remember, because I was like, I don't want to forget anything about this. Because I think it's going to be important later on down the line. And I haven't yet, but I'm definitely going to use it with a client at some point.
I really like to say therapy is what you make it. As a client.
Mm-hmm.
It can be the best experience of your life, and it can be the hardest one if you don't invest into it. But
I don't even think, sometimes I think those two things are the same, being the hardest and being the best. I think it's more like, I don't really like to use terms like good or bad when it comes to talking about a session. Oh, this was a good session with a client, a bad session, because sometimes you go in and it feels like war, but you walk out and it was so productive. Sometimes you go in and it felt like a, warm and happy Candyland kind of whatever. And you're just like, so we just caught up on what I had done the past 3 weeks, but I don't really. So I think it's more like productive. And sometimes productivity in therapy comes from the hard. It comes from just settling in on one thing at the beginning, especially if it's like grief or pain, and just sitting in that until you like understand it and get it.
Right, which is so hard for everybody to do. It's really hard to sit in pain because it's uncomfortable. It is, And I think that's really what I meant by that is like you make it what you want to make it. And like, if, just to, and that's why therapy is one of those things where it's not, when you go in, it's not, I think people just need to realize it's not always going to be happy. Not always going to be happy moments.
Yeah. But really, like, if it was, you wouldn't need it.
Exactly.
Like, if you were just happy and satisfied and fulfilled and content, you wouldn't be seeking out therapy. And so to expect to not dive into that kind of stuff in there, it's not realistic, because that's the stuff that's holding you back. And I think that something that I realized in going through it as a client and in walking through it with others as a therapist is the biggest difference pre-therapy and not post, but like during, I don't know what the right prefix for that, but is the difference is that you're not alone this time. Like, you've tried taking care of it so long by yourself. And so what if you chose to be vulnerable? What if you chose to ask for help? What if you chose to let somebody else in while you're going through it? That's a monumental shift.
Yeah, it's a big one. And I think it's the best thing in the world, when you find that person to be able to connect with and do it with.
So let's talk about a movie.
Yes. Shall We Dance was my choice.
Yeah. So why did you choose this movie? Because this was also one, like, you wrote me and said, like, hey, I want to do round 2. I got my movie. I'm ready to go. So it wasn't even like you had to kind of like wrestle with what should I pick. So why this one? Yeah.
This one has a lot of special meaning for me. I like to, one of my things that I wrote down that I really, because it just came to me when I was watching it again last night, and I thought this movie has a lot of special meaning for me because it's just one of those ones that you love watching. It's like a good cup of tea. It warms you inside.
Comfort food?
Yeah, in so many ways it is. It's like a comfort movie that just has so much authenticity in it.
Interesting. Okay. We kind of talked before, like, this was one that was a part of an assignment that we had in grad school for marital life cycle. I want to say there was more than one movie that we had to watch. This is one that I specifically remember and I had to write a paper on because I felt like, do I get this? Like, do I understand this? I'm writing a thing on it, but do I really get it?
Yeah, I know when I had to watch it as well for the class. I mean, I remember it took me some time to really understand what I wanted to write about it. But yeah, and it also too, this, not only does it hold meaning in that way, but it also holds meaning for me because I am also extremely passionate about dancing. It's actually it's actually one thing that I enjoy and that my life would be completely missing if I did not have it in it.
So that explains a lot. Okay. It is like kryptonite to me. I hate dance. It's not like I don't want to see it or know it. It's not like I'm afraid of it, but like, I don't like to dance at all. And it is a I don't even know frustration so much as it's like, she has to move into acceptance, my poor wife, about that. But like, because I'm a musician, so like, you put me on the stage, I'll make the music and then you go out there and dance to it, but I don't want to dance to it. Like, I want to be making it. That's what I want to do.
You're on the other side of it.
Yeah. I'll be happy as a clam.
I've been dancing since I was 6 years old, so it is truly who I am.
Okay. And I've been singing about that long too. So I mean, that makes a lot of sense. So you knew down in your gut you wanted to talk about this movie. Let's get into it. So like, what is it in this movie that hits you? Why is it comfort food? Other than dancing.
Right. I think a lot of it is comfort food because it just talks about one of the main things that there's such a misconception about, especially in relationships, is that it's not about somebody making us happy. It's about us making like finding the happiness in ourselves, making ourselves happy, and how important that is in our lives, and what a value that is, because you could see it as, especially in the beginning of the movie, as Mr. Clark, as John Clark was traveling on the subway, and there was just a look about him as he was traveling in every day in and out of work. I mean, I know, at least from what I gathered from the movie, I know that he enjoyed what he did, but there was a part of him that was missing. And once you have that piece that's missing, it's like all the pieces in a pie. If there's one that's missing from there, they're not, it's not connecting. It's out of balance. And he was out of balance. There was something missing, but he didn't know what it was in the beginning.
Was he a lawyer?
Yeah, he was it looked to me like, when I was watching the movie, that he was an estate planning lawyer.
Because he talked about helping people write wills, and then I guess reading the wills and people saying like, is that it? And him saying, well, that's all the paperwork, but the rest is up to you. Right. Sounded law-ish, but I never really kind of knew.
Yeah, nope. He was an estate planning lawyer that, dealt with a lot of those kinds of things. And it's interesting because he goes back to it at the end of the movie. He kind of pulls that back in a little bit about his clients. So I think, like, for me, that was just a feeling of, when I watched the movie, I was like, gosh, I've actually been in that place before. I know what that feeling is like, and the interesting thing for me is that I related to the characters in that, because when he's going by the studio and he's watching Paulina in the window, and she looks just as, down, and like a part of her is missing just as much as he is.
Or at least that's what he's telling himself. That's the story he's telling himself.
That's what he's viewing it as. Yeah. Like, this person looks like they're going through the same thing I'm going through.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. We're going to have to do this together, because literally at that part, the movie goes off the rails for me. No pun intended, because he's on the subway. So like, I don't want to take away your chance to like kind of talk through this, but I think that, to me, that moment. So in the beginning, we do experience him, and we're kind of told by his wife, almost, it seems like he's not fulfilled, or if it's not fulfilled, it's that he's in autopilot, or maybe
just going through the motions.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And his wife, I think it's his birthday at the beginning. His kids are at the house, having a dinner. Mm-hmm. And his wife says something along the lines of like, it's so tough to shop for you because you don't want anything.
Right. Tell me what you want in a box.
Yeah. Which, like, if there's not like a more obvious way to communicate the theme of the movie, I think, than that character saying to the other, you don't want anything, kind of speaking to this like absence of passion, I guess. Mm-hmm. So then that part where he's on the subway and I think that this is something the movie's telling us happens almost every day. He's on the subway going by the dance studio. I don't know if Jennifer Lopez's character is there in the window every day, but he looks up, he sees that. And when he sees her looking out, to me, that almost, maybe not that part, maybe it comes in later, but certainly when he's describing it later, it strikes as like a fantasy to me. Mm-hmm. Like, he's maybe even wondering, oh, well, if I was with her, would I be more...
Would I be happier?
Yeah, insert whatever there.
Yeah, because there's so many things about the movie that can give so many mixed messages. And it I think it leaves the audience to kind of gain their own perspective from the movie, because there's so many different things.
Can you hear my dog?
I can hear you, dog.
I am willing to bet you that somebody is walking their good boy behind our place. Give me 1 sec.
Okay.
Hey, what are you doing? You know that Dad is doing an interview? Why are you barking? What are you doing with all that barking? Huh? Take a breath. Take a breath. You're okay. The mailman's not going to get you. He gets like a mohawk of hair standing up on his back whenever he starts that.
Do you want me to start over on that one?
What were we saying? I mean, I know I talked about the fantasy component of it.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think there is a fantasy component of it just because his reality just is not what he wants, that he looks and sees this other reality of, would I be happier if this was me? And I think what I like about the movie is like I was saying, is that it gives everybody who watches it a chance to be able to view it as they need to, because you can have a totally different perspective on one thing versus another, and there's so many different things moving. There's lots of moving pieces in it.
Yeah. So tell me, so he sees the dance studio, he sees J-Lo like looking out. Take me to the places in the movie that like light you up, that you feel like can say something.
I mean, I know that when he looks up and he sees this, attractive woman, he's thinking to himself probably in the moment of like, well, there's somebody, who isn't looking as happy, and as he goes every day, he sees this. But like some of the things that really light me up about the movie is one of my favorite scenes in the beginning of the movie is when he comes into the studio for the first time and he meets Paulina. And she tells him, oh, well, the class is starting tonight. And you can even see how uncomfortable he is when she's like, well, single or a couple. And he's like,
he doesn't know how to answer. Yeah.
Like, single, but not really single. So you could definitely tell that there was that, uncomfortableness between the two of them. And that maybe, it's funny because later on in the movie, she definitely calls him out on something, which we'll get to. But in the beginning of the movie, I think he's trying to understand, why am I here? Am I here because of this possible, attraction that I kind of see every
That's
day?
interesting that he might not know why he's there.
Yep. And that was kind of my perspective on it, that he maybe didn't really realize he was there, that first, attraction of that and Paulina.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that part really to me kind of fed into this, like, is he trying to have an affair kind of thing? Because it's almost like when she says single or couple, she's asking about, are you, almost like in therapy, are you a couples client? Or are you an individual client? That's what she's asking. But he almost, oh, is it relationship status? Oh, yeah, no. I'm married, but I'm not here. Then like, there's that weird stumble, like he's thinking too much about it instead of just, yeah. Okay.
But as you see when he comes into the class, and then, he keeps on coming back like the next couple times, he starts to really get into it and he's really enjoying dancing. So I think when he stepped into that studio, he really didn't know why he was there. There was just a pull. And one of the things that lights me up is to watch him get so happy knowing that he can do something that he probably never even thought about before, and doing or even trying. And he's pretty proud of himself. And the smile on his face was kind of a light up moment for me of like, oh my gosh, he's finding something that's bringing him joy.
Yeah. I think what's so interesting about his experience with that too is it seems like dancing was something that was so, I don't even want to say it was so far out of his wheelhouse, because it wasn't even in the same street as a wheelhouse that he would look on, like in the same city. Like dancing would have never in a million years been something that he would have thought, I'd like to try that. And it turned out to be something that he connected with on so many different levels. Like I think it was grounding for him. Like it put him in his body. It gave him a community. It gave him enjoyment. It was like a discipline, that he had to keep literally showing up to and learning and committing and that kind of thing.
Yeah, because I mean, from what it looked like in the movie, I mean, he's going in every day in a law office. Nobody's really, talking to one another. And I think what was really interesting about that all was that I think he wanted to connect to Link, Peterson, but didn't know how, because he's like, well, he's, into sports and all this kinds of stuff. And how do I connect with this person? And when he finally sees him at the dance studio, it's oh my God, there is somebody else that wants to, try this. And then they end up connecting and learning how
really
much,
authentically too,
very organically.
And it turns out that Link is like putting on the sports kind of stuff because he doesn't care about any of that, but he thinks this is a role I got to play
to fit in.
Yeah. When what I really love, since I was, I think the newspaper or magazine article that was shown later said he'd been dancing since he was like 6.
Right. To all his mom's rumba records. Yeah. Which, is another part of the movie that I really like, was not just, it was the fact of the matter of that he was embracing who he was. I think that message in the movie I really like too, like embracing who you are and not being ashamed to show it, because he was so afraid, letting anyone in the office know that he enjoyed dancing.
Yeah. But there was an element, I mean, he did hide it though.
He did hide it. I think John ended up helping him be able to embrace it a little bit more. He did want to continue.
No, I meant John. Why did John hide it?
Oh, John hiding it. I tried to figure that out while watching the movie again this last night. I think if I had to kind of put a therapeutic perspective on it, I really wondered if the reason why he was hiding it was also, this, like, just like Link, maybe an element of shame, an element of men don't do that kind of thing. And that's kind of what I got out of it. And I'd be curious to see what you thought about that.
I kind of wondered, I don't have a great name for this yet, but I've talked about it with a lot of clients. It's this meta feeling where, something has happened. You've done something, you've thought something, you've said something, whatever it is, something's happened. And that thing isn't necessarily right or wrong. But you don't tell your partner or your friend or whoever it is. And then you don't tell them again the next day. And pretty soon you feel shame, not because of what it was, but because of the length of time that's passed.
Okay.
And so like, it's this weird, like meta shame. And so long has passed that you're telling yourself, it's all about a story. You're telling yourself, well, if I tell them now, I've got to answer to why I didn't tell them. And I kind of wondered if maybe at the beginning it was, I'm taking dance lessons. I don't want my wife and my son and my daughter to know that. Right. But then after a while it became, well, I haven't told them yet. And I'm so deep into it, I have no idea how to tell them. I've been taking dance lessons every day for months and I'm going to this competition and I'm pretty good and I could maybe if it was just at that point, this weird like meta shame or embarrassment that he had held it back so long.
True. Yeah.
I really don't know.
I wasn't sure really either. That was kind of just my guess on it, just because of just the body language that I noticed in the movie, especially the body language with Link as well. But yeah, I'm not really sure either.
Unless maybe like, speaking to what you said earlier, he didn't quite know why he was there. He had the stumbling of his words with Jennifer Lopez's character. He saw her in the window. Maybe he was ashamed and didn't want to answer the question that he thought his wife might ask. Why did you go there?
True.
Like he might have ended up in a place that was, I guess, innocent or whatever, but if it was just, oh, I saw an attractive lady standing in their window and I wanted to go meet her.
Right. Or why didn't you ask me to go dancing with you?
Yeah. Yeah. I get that. I feel like that's not even meta shame. I mean, that's just shame. Like having to reckon with that. I need a better term than meta shame, but
I actually haven't heard that before. That's a new one.
Well, that's what I'm saying is I don't have a term for it, but it's
Yeah.
this concept that I do feel like a lot of my clients, when I ask them like, how's your sobriety going? Have you contacted your sponsor? Well, I haven't talked to my sponsor in a couple of weeks. How come? Well, at this point, like if I call, they're going to say like, why haven't you called? And I was like, sponsors know. Sponsors are sponsors because they have a sponsor. Like they
Mm-hmm.
know what it is. So when you call, they're not going to shame you. They know what's up. So then it's noticing it's not that they've lost their sobriety and they've got to report something, but it's at a length of time that they're ashamed of. And so just most of the time what I tell them then is, hey, what if after our session, since there'll be 10 minutes till the hour, what if you just called them right after?
Mm-hmm.
Just before you even get up, just do it. Just say hi. Doesn't have to be long. Just connect with them. Like just get it done. And there's something about telling them, what if you gave yourself permission to erase the time debt or to forgive yourself for not doing it? Or, hey, listen, just this once, you got to wipe the slate clean and just go, I'm just going to call him right now. But whatever that feeling is of, it's the time is what's producing the shame.
Yeah, no, that makes so much sense. I really like that.
Yeah. But now that we've talked about it, I think it is probably more like him not wanting to answer the question, why did you go in there again?
Yeah. Because I know later in the movie, trying to think which character it was, but later in the movie, he wants to be able to, I think he really wants to deep down be able to tell his wife about it. Mm-hmm. But again, he explains later in the movie why he didn't. And then that part is always interesting to me. It's actually the best quote of the movie at the very end when he says, and to his wife, I don't remember exactly what he said. I couldn't completely get it all right out there at the moment, but he says in the way of, I didn't want to tell you because I was afraid and ashamed that if I told you that I was unhappy at times, that I would be hurting the person that I most treasure in this world. And if you think about what you were talking about, the meta shame and everything like that, that comes to that of how do I tell this person that I'm not unhappy with them so much as I'm just unhappy with me and what I've been doing, and just kind of, that in life.
That feels like it might be an inability to be able to identify what's my stuff, what's your stuff, what's our stuff.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Because I think if he would have approached that from this is my stuff, it's not our stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I think he may have been able to do that, but I got the line right here. I looked it up on IMDb. The one thing I'm proudest of in my whole life is that you're happy with me.
Yes.
If I couldn't tell you that I was unhappy sometimes, is because I didn't want to risk hurting the one person I treasure most. I'm so sorry. And it's like he couldn't see himself as a one. He could only see himself as a one that's part of a two.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And when he felt that one wasn't linking,
Mm-hmm.
he didn't want to hurt, his wife by telling her that I'm unhappy. And that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm unhappy with you. I'm just unhappy with my life right now at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And you even see a little bit of, and they also, are, disconnected a little bit. You can see it in the beginning when they're talking about, he wants to go, can we go see a movie? And she's like, sure. Well, we can actually look at we can look through the ads together. And I thought, in that moment, I was heartbroken. I was just like, oh.
I wondered what that was. I wondered if it was they had tried so many times and they could never make it happen, or they don't have the same tastes, or.
I am not sure. I was heartbroken in the moment because I thought, well, here's you can obviously tell that she's super busy in her work and with their family and everything. And he's very busy in his life with his work, but here's a chance that he wanted to be able to connect with his wife. And I think either her already disconnect and not sure how to answer it, didn't, he was trying to reach out and
It was a bid for connection. Yeah. And she didn't pick up on it.
Yeah. The dance didn't happen. Like he was coming forward and she was kind of like, I don't really know how to take 2 steps forward with that one.
Yeah. So tell me more, like what other parts of the movie hit you?
Yeah. Another part that really hit me was when this is like once he, actually does get more involved in dancing and stuff, and he's trying to figure out how to connect with Bobby in the sense of when she's looking for a partner, and she feels that John would be a good, Richard Gere's character feels like he would be a good partner for her, but yet what he is most uncomfortable with, and you can see the uncomfortableness, is how do I dance with somebody in a very, the rumba is actually a very sensual dance between 2 people. How do I do that with somebody that I don't feel connected with? Mm-hmm. And then you see Paulina come over and she shows him what that's supposed to look like with Bobby. And you can just see the discomfort of like, I don't know how to do that.
Oh yeah. And then Bobby just goes, just do that.
Yeah. And he's just like, well, I don't really know how to do that. And you wonder in the moment if he's thinking in his head, well, I don't really want to do that with you.
Yeah. But what is it about? See, that's another good part to go, like, what was it about him almost yearning to do that with J-Lo, but not with her?
Right. And I think, and that's what I was getting to too. It's like with that interesting, disconnection with Bobby, he had that connection with Paulina, and that scene that is like one of the most pivotal scenes in the whole movie. I mean, every time I watch that scene, I'm just like, oh my God. Like I come out of it going, because I'm a dancer, right? And I know what it's like when you feel the dance. It's a connection that you can't even, like, your body, like that's how you express yourself through dance. And when I watched it at the end of it, I'm always like, oh my God, wow. Like
it sounds like you're speaking to like an attunement.
Yeah.
So like, I know that when we were in, I want to say like, oh gosh, Hopkins was the same time as Myrtle Life Cycle, lifespan development. We learned about like mirror neurons, and like when a mother is comforting her child, when she holds her child close to her chest, her heartbeat speeds up to get closer to the child's, then the child's and her heartbeats match. And as she can regulate herself, the child's heartbeat goes down because of that human to human attunement, attachment, assisted regulation kind of relationship. And it sounds like that is something that can happen in that moment of dance as well. Like they were in sync.
Yes, and he was not in sync with Bobby. I think he was trying to push himself to try to be that with Bobby, but because he was so comfortable with Paulina, whatever that was, whether it was that slight attraction, whether it was the sense of, maybe this person's going through very similar things that I am going through, connection, whatever that it was, he was able to let go and just dance the way that he wanted to and that she wanted him to. And it was such a moment for both of them, because I think that reignited her passion in dancing. Oh my God, this is what it used to feel like. And it feels so good. And he was like, this is really great. I never knew that I could do something like this.
I think there was something about him dropping down from his head too.
Because I think dropped into his heart more.
There were times like with Bobby, and I think even times with Paulina, where he would be dancing and he was thinking so much about it as if it were mechanical.
Right.
And he couldn't sync with anything. But then one of the things that J-Lo told him in that scene where it's just him and her in the dance studio at night, like private lesson, whatever, is she was like, don't do anything unless you feel it.
Exactly, because dance is about feel. Yeah, dance is about feeling emotions, the expression, like all of that. And I think
Mm-hmm.
he couldn't feel with Bobby because he didn't allow himself, because he was in his head too much.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that, that kind of speaks to that connecting him with his body thing again. Something about, I don't know if it's that relationship with Paulina, the attraction, whatever it was, but it allowed him to stop thinking.
Mm-hmm. And feel.
And which really, I think, is a moment of, for the first time, being truly present. Because I think if a person can be 100% present in the moment, it's not that they turn their brain off, and it's not they turn their feelings off. Because I have clients where maybe if they're a little more heady, they think the answer is to stop thinking and feel. Or if I have clients who, if they're operating completely out of feeling, they may say they're impulsive or they're volatile or whatever, and it's to turn their feelings off and get into their head. But the answer isn't that. It's those two things are made to be in sync. Like, it's not you get 100 points. So how many out of 100 do you want to give to your brain? How many out of 100 do you want to give to your heart? It's give 100 to both. Let them both be in sync. And in that moment, it was like, for the first time, all systems operating together.
Mm-hmm.
And he was able to be fully present. And the experience of being fully present, whether it's me as a person being fully present or me being with another person who's fully present, because I experienced that in my life before I was ever able to do it. And every time I was with somebody that could be fully present with me, I walked away going, that was refreshing. Like, I felt like they saw me, they heard me, I felt connected with. What is it about that person that they can, like, when I sit with them, I feel great afterwards. And it was just because when I sat with them, I was the only person in the world. Like, they were really with me.
Right. And I wonder too, if like maybe that's what he felt was missing with his wife. Like, I'm sure he had that initially, but maybe just with life and work and kids and everything, he lost that. And then when he found that with Paulina, it made him realize, like, gosh, I really want this with my wife. This is something that it's great I have with this person, but can I bring this home and have this with my wife, which you do see happen towards the end of the movie when he goes and meets her at the store that she works at.
Yeah. There's so much about this, though, where I'm just like, was he being skeezy or what? Because, like,
no, it does have that. Yeah, it does have that vibe with the movie where it kind of makes you wonder one way and then you're taken another way.
Yeah, because there was so I mean, the wife gets she hires a private investigator
to check out and make sure.
Who is kind of skeezy because he kind of keeps hitting on the wife.
Plus, I think he tries to like really play it out that, like everybody who comes is looking for an affair. And she's like, well, I don't know if that's why I'm here. I just want to know what my husband's doing.
Yeah. So
yeah, there's definitely, I agree with you. There's definitely difficult moments in the movie to decipher. Mm-hmm. It's just, it's got a lot of mixed messages, and it really does. That's why I was saying before, is that it really leaves it up to the audience to kind of.
Mm-hmm. What's interesting though is that the private investigator does tell her at some point he's taking dancing lessons. He's not having an affair.
Yes, so he does.
Tells her, yep. But then like. I didn't get the impression that helped her tremendously. Like, there wasn't this moment of her shoulders like releasing. She didn't feel more secure or comfortable in the relationship, because then it was almost like it shifted to, well, why the heck hasn't he told me?
Mm-hmm. Why would my husband not tell me that that he was trying to do something that brought him joy?
Yeah. And then she and his daughter show up at I keep wanting to call it a recital, but it's not a recital. It's
competition.
Like competition. It's they show up at that, and he does the waltz with Bobby.
And the quick step. Mm-hmm.
The quick step. Yeah. It's the third one.
Did they do a third one? I thought it was the waltz and the quick step, and then she did two of them with Link. She did the cha-cha, and then...
But doesn't he come back and do another one then? Because there's one where he steps on her dress.
Yeah, that was the quick step.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
That's
while
when
he
his
was doing
daughter.
that, his wife and daughter are there.
Hmm.
There something is. Oh, so Bobby says to him like something about like, "Hey, are your wife and kid here?" Because I thought I heard somebody yelling out, "Go, Dad!" And when she said that, he goes on to like hyper alert mode. He's like looking at the crowd. But I thought to myself, how would she know that somebody yelling "Go, Dad" is for him? Go,
Yeah.
Dad! Go,
I
Dad! There was at least 100 people in that crowd.
There was probably a lot of dads there. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking the same thing in the moment. I was like, how would she know that that was for him?
Yeah, yeah. So he then sees his wife and daughter, and his daughter yells out like "Go, Dad" or something, and it all of a sudden it takes him out of the moment,
Hmm.
and that causes him to step on Bobby's dress, and her dress basically rips off, to where it looks like she's in a one piece, and she gets embarrassed and she runs off, and then now he has to kind of like, it reminds me of that episode of Seinfeld where George has, I guess, like his work quote unquote friends and then the gang that he hangs out with, and he's like, my worlds are colliding.
Yeah.
A George of two worlds cannot. And it reminded me like he's all of a sudden got to reconcile these two worlds in the moment. And his wife gets up, and this is something I didn't understand. His wife gets up and runs out of there. I thought, oh, so they know that they just distracted him enough to where it ruined his like performance.
Right.
But
Yeah.
then the wife gets up and runs out, and he chases after her. And
Hmm.
I couldn't quite figure out, she was okay enough to sit in the crowd and watch, but then when the show stops, she gets up and runs out. I couldn't figure out why I get her being upset that he didn't share this part of his life with her. I don't get why she ran out.
Yeah. I was kind of puzzled in that moment either. I don't know if maybe it was more her feeling um, embarrassed by the fact that she was one of the reasons why.
Mm-hmm.
Not really sure if that
Maybe.
was, yeah, if that was part of it, or just upset the fact maybe maybe that got to her eventually. Like she was just upset to see him so happy, and maybe what I was thinking about this when I watched the movie is maybe there was a part of her that was unhappy too. They don't really highlight that in the movie. They highlight his unhappiness, but maybe there was something unhappy in her that she was feeling, and watching him so happy, she just maybe started thinking about her own unhappiness. And then, is there something that I'm doing to make my husband unhappy? Why would he want to,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
That's interesting. I've had a few clients who, in our like therapeutic journey together, who have talked about, I I can't really pursue something that makes me happy because if my partner sees me uh, growing, being fulfilled, being happy, whatever it is, they get really mad.
This is one of my favorite topics to talk about,
What
but
do you what
yes.
do you think that is? Like, what's going on there? And I don't know if that's what's happening with Susan Sarandon, but if we're gonna go down that road, like let's say that it was this, like, oh, he's being happy, I don't like that. Like, what's going on there?
I think that's a really interesting question, and I think everybody can look at it in a different way. I think there ends up just being this feeling of, oh my God, what did I do that would make my partner so unhappy? And I think it's a toughie. It's a really tough one, because I think that we're expected in our relationships to make our partner happy, and if we're not doing that, I think there's a lot of misconception there. If we're not doing that, then why are we in the relationship? Kind of like when you go back to past movies that talk about you complete me.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those things that if you're not initially happy with yourself before, like, you bring happiness to the person that should already have the happiness inside, and if they don't have that, that's something that is their responsibility to find.
So
So
you
I
think it's like it brings something out in, if partner A is finding fulfillment and happiness, but it's not with an activity, if it's not like centered in the relationship,
Yes,
not
thank
in
you.
a not in a bad way, but like if it's not
Right.
centered in the relationship, you think it brings out something in partner B that that is, you're not doing a good job. You're not being the best partner.
Right. You're not being the best partner. What am I doing, that's not making my partner happy, when it's really not about that. It's about that person finding happiness in themselves.
Yeah.
And I think I don't know if you would agree with this, but I think a lot of the misconception of relationships is that key component is happiness in general.
Yeah. I mean, I do. I mean, so I think that whatever it is with Susan Sarandon and Richard Gere, I'm going to pull it up. John and, I'm so bad at names. Beverly. I mean, it's definitely a homeostasis thing because the system's changing. Like the first thing as you were describing that came to my mind was misery loves company. And it's not necessarily that Beverly was miserable or John was miserable, but they might have been at the same level of satisfaction or fulfillment. And so then when John kind of takes responsibility for his own life and feeling and fulfillment, and he begins to move towards, let's call it joy, without her also moving towards her own joy or their collective joy, it disturbs the system.
Right. Yes, exactly. Yep.
And so the system always will try to right itself. It'll always try to get itself back to
balance.
Status quo. Yeah. Back to homeostasis. And so I wonder if because I think, if Beverly could have kind of gotten into her, I'll call it sober mind. I don't want to call it right mind. Is any partner going to be upset that their partner is experiencing true joy? No, nobody's going to be upset with that. They're going to be thrilled. Oh my gosh, you're connecting with something in this world that makes you more you. It makes Josh more Josh. It makes Amie more Amie. It makes whoever more whoever. Right. That is something that would make your heart explode with a glitter bomb inside of you. But when you're not in that intentional sober mind, and what ends up happening is you feel like your partner moves away from you. You feel like a disconnect.
Yes, because they're finding joy. You didn't know that. It almost makes you stop and think, well, oh, wait a minute. Maybe I'm not aware of the joy that I don't have in my life. It almost makes you stop and think about your own self. I mean, because if somebody's not happy about, if you're not happy about your partner's joy, it's checking in with yourself and just being asking yourself, why am I feeling this sense of jealousy or something like that? What's going on what am I feeling on inside? What's going on with me here?
Yeah. I think the initial thing is they would feel like if he's taking a step towards that thing,
he's taking a step away from me.
It's a step away from me. Yeah. Which that's not the case at all. And I think then the secondary thing you end up in is because your brain tries to start reckoning with why that's happening, even though that's not what's happening. So then you've got to develop a meaning. Humans are meaning making animals. So all right, he's taking a step away from me. What's going on there? Well, maybe I'm not happy.
Maybe I need to take a step towards him.
Yeah. So then, yeah.
And I think that's the meaning of the movie. I really do believe is that we realize that relationships are dances.
It's a good Sue Johnson quote. Yeah.
She's one of my favorites.
I started seeing, what was it? She started changing the language in her presentation a little while ago. She's always talked about the dance thing, but it's, now I'm totally blanking on it. Maybe it's instead of saying pursue, withdraw, she started using something with dance, but basically that kind of thing too, that it's active, it's alive, the relationship. And it's dynamic. Whenever one person makes any move, that's a law of physics. I mean, there's an equal and opposite, move that's there as well.
And really that's what I truly enjoy about the movie is that when he takes a step to find his joy, even though at first she's, upset about it and really goes to what I like to say, it's not about the soap. It's
mine is, it's not about the dishes. That's, yeah, same
it's
thing.
it's not about the soap, about the fact of her being, upset that he
Mm-hmm.
didn't tell her. It's the fact of like, oh my God, like he's finding joy, and maybe I'm not feeling good about that. And why am I not feeling good about
Yeah.
that?
This is a significant, I think especially what it was for her is in the middle of that competition, it's not just him dancing. It's his
Mm-hmm.
whole crew is over to the side cheering him on with their whole hearts. And she sees there's these connections, there's these relationships. And so it's like, oh man,
Light bulb. It's a
I am
light bulb.
missing out on this giant part of his life.
Mm-hmm.
And what's going on? And it's, yeah, with my clients, I always say it's not about the dishes. Oh, you got in this giant fight about the dishes, but it's not about the dishes. And it's that whole like process versus content, because a client will come in and want to tell you all of the content about the fights that they've had, but the content doesn't matter.
It's the process. Yeah,
It's
it's
the
all,
process, and the
yeah,
process isn't
process.
what the content's what the fight's about. The process is how you fight.
Mm-hmm.
And really how you fight has to do with how you engage your own feelings and then how you bring them to your partner and how you reckon with. This was something when I was in my like mid-20s, I could not understand. I remember asking two of my friends that were married, hey, I think I know what to do if my girlfriend has a bad day, but I had a great day. And she comes, I think I know what to do with if I had a bad day and she has a great day, and then how to like sync up. What do I do if we both had a bad day? So it's this like, it's this reckoning of, the process, not just accessing my own feelings, bringing them to my partner, but also being able to like be present as they bring them to you, and reckoning with, well, what if those feelings are like, they're colliding, not that they're in opposition to each other, because I think that what I wasn't understanding in my mid-20s was that my partner can feel something while I feel something. Like, it's not like we have to take turns or
Mm-hmm.
resolve one before the other can like activate emotions.
Right. And you see that in the garden scene towards the end when he gets all upset and doesn't want to do dancing anymore because he knows he's upset his wife. But then she, almost has a softening in the moment. It's like, well, why don't you want to go dancing? You should go dancing. Or why don't you teach me how to dance? I'd love to learn how to dance. Like and there's the dance, right? The dance right
That's her bid for
there.
connection.
That's right. That's her taking 2 steps forward and him being, sad that he felt that he hurt his wife. So taking 2 steps back instead of 2 steps forward, saying, that's in that moment of, I should tell her the reason why I didn't want to tell her that I was dancing so I could take 2 steps forward.
Yeah. Yeah. He was in codependence in that moment.
Oh, yes.
And it wasn't like, I try to tell clients, like, because I think people perceive codependence as a light switch. You either are or you aren't. And if you are, you're not healthy. And if you aren't, you are. But I think codependence is more like we're all in it and our levels go up and down. So like at any given moment, I could have a codependency flare up, but that doesn't mean I'm an unhealthy person. And so in that moment, and codependency is just like, I'm not okay unless you're okay. So in that
Right.
moment, when he noticed my wife is so upset and he told himself it's because of the dancing.
So I'm no longer okay.
So then it's that first level change, first order change. He said, okay, cool. So if I eliminate the dancing, happy wife.
Right. Not happy life, but yeah.
Yeah.
It's,
And that's
yeah.
what he was trying to do. And then she came along, like you said, she came along and was just like, oh my gosh, this lights you up so much. Why don't you keep doing it? Why don't you teach me how to do it? Why don't we do it together?
Why don't you bring us together to do it?
Yeah, it's integration.
Yep. Yep. So I think that's a really interesting perspective, is that you do see a little bit of codependency in the movie, especially towards the end in that scene.
I wonder if that was present in that scene at the beginning where he asked about seeing a movie. And then she's like, well, we got to look at the ads together. Like he did kind of acquiesce really quickly instead of being like, no, I want to go see a movie. Let's go see a movie. It was just like, oh, you're right.
We'll just look at the ads together. It's really, we don't need to go. Yeah, I agree. Maybe there was a little bit of that in the beginning too. I mean, you could definitely see where maybe some of that codependency was in the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not fully aware of it
Yeah.
at those moments.
Which, like, once again, it doesn't mean that it's an immature relationship. It doesn't mean it's unhealthy. Like, we all have codependent tendencies.
We all do.
And we all have flare-ups. And like, if you get triggered and your codependency flares up, I mean, part of personal work is just shortening the time between getting triggered and becoming aware that you're in a triggered state. Yeah. It's shortening that amount of time to where you can notice in real time, oh shoot, I'm getting triggered right now. How do I choose something different?
Right. Because awareness is the key. Like just being aware of like, oh, I'm feeling this in my body. It's happening. My partner's unhappy. So maybe I need to feel unhappy instead of switching that going, oh, nope. What this means is my partner's unhappy. I can still be there for them and love them and support them, but I don't have to put myself in the same feeling.
And I think this was like I don't want to project. This was my journey in coming to grips with some of that too. I think at the beginning, I swung the pendulum the opposite way. So like, oh, my partner's upset. That's your problem. You need to get that taken care of, and I'll be here when you get done. So it wasn't this like
extreme opposite.
Yeah. It wasn't this like, oh, I need to take on that feeling. I need to make it my responsibility. It was like pushing everything back across the table to them, which is still being codependent. It's still being controlled by the other instead of in your sober mind reckoning with what's happening inside of me and how do I decide to engage with that and act on it in what I need and what I feel, rather than just, these like hardline rules of whenever you do that, I'm always going to do this. Whenever you do that, I'm always going to do that.
And that's why it really does come back to the other meaning of the movie, talking about happiness. You're responsible for your own happiness. You can't really truly make your partner happy. You can add to their happiness. You can help them find happiness, but they are responsible for their own happiness. Yeah. And then you add to it.
Yeah. I think that it's something that I always tried to tell my premarital clients was like, you have to be a whole one. Like, the two becoming one. Well, if you're only half,
starts with one.
Yeah. Like if you're only half, you're not bringing enough to the relationship to make. So you've got to do your own work to fill yourself up, because when you engage the things that light up your soul, like you bring that into the relationship. And if you don't have your own life, then you don't have anything to give the other person.
Right. You don't have anything to give the other person. You don't have anything to give to the relationship. There's no added value. And then that gets tricky, because that gets into filling a void, and that's where, and health can kind of come into the mix. So I agree completely on that one.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else in the movie that you want to touch on?
Those were the big points for me when I was watching the movie. And then of course I just love Beverly's quote. And I believe that I actually can quote it full out here because I wrote it down. I just have to find it in a moment. Okay. So one of my best, one of the best things I like about this quote is just the realness. Why do you think people get married? Because we need a witness, and I only took a little part of it, but because we need a witness in to our lives, but in a marriage, you are promising to care about everything. Your life won't go unnoticed because I will be your witness. And that's only some of the quote, but I thought that particular part was just so beautiful. I mean, that
feels so affirming.
Yeah.
That feels like you matter.
You mean a lot to me. And even though it might be hard times, difficult times, it doesn't matter. I'm witnessing it. I'm there with you. I'm here by your side, going through it with you. I'll witness it. And I'm here. And I love that.
That kind of goes to because I think these things are tied together, talking about John's ability to be fully present. And that's where he meets his joy, being fully present. that's the quote that you just gave. That's a relational example of that as well. It's being fully present to your partner. Tell me something that the people that you've worked with have taught you.
Such a good question, Josh. And it's evolved for me. You know what I mean? Like the answer that I had, if somebody asked me that 5 years ago, it would be different than the answer that I have today. And really the thing that my clients have shown me the most is how I can show up better for them. That goes back to kind of what we were talking about. Instead of it helps me to show up better for them, and has helped me to learn how to empower them more, allowing myself to relax into what it's like to just be fully present with them.
Well, that's that goes along with the theme of the movie a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I struggled with that in the beginning, as my journey as a therapist, coach, all that kinds of stuff. I felt so much for my clients, and I wanted to be able to help them so much that I did what I realized that what I wasn't doing was truly helping them. I was doing more harm than good. And then when I took a step back and learned from some of my clients of, like who really taught me, like, I just need you to be here with me, to listen. And that's really it.
I think me too. And I think the way that manifested in me was I was so concerned about helping them in the quote unquote right way that I learned in school, that in my head, it's like that scene in The Hangover where all of the math equations are appearing because Zach Galifianakis is like thinking of them all. In my head, that's what was happening. And so I never was present because I was so concerned about like, well, if I don't have the right answer, then I can't help them.
Will they come back? Right. Yeah. Or will they come back?
When really it just came down to like, if you don't know the right, I remember Dr. Harvey saying, the most powerful tool that the therapist has is the therapeutic relationship. And I had this epiphany one day that like, well, if that's the most powerful tool, what am I doing running through the hallways of file cabinets in my head, trying to search for just the right thing when the most powerful thing is a relationship? So what if I just like, let that crap go? And if something comes up when I don't have the answer, it's okay for me to say, hey, I'm going to read up on that this week. And then next week when we talk, I'm going to bring something back, rather than, just being able to be there with them. And if all you can offer is that does suck.
Right. Or, what, that's really hard. I don't know that answer, but I am here to help you find it.
Yeah. Cause I think, so much of my work has just turned out to be like validating and normalizing.
Yeah. Cause I really think that truly as human beings, it's really all we're asking for. It's just to be noticed. We want to be noticed.
Yeah. Yeah. Witnessed too. So helping you to learn how to show up. Yeah. That feels right.
Because I wasn't fully showing up for my clients. I went in the beginning in the wrong way, thinking that I needed to have all the answers for them. And I didn't.
Yeah. Which what's weird is because, and that goes back to kind of like what your concept of therapy was, right? So you thought that they were going to give you all the answers. Thank God that what we do is not based on our personal experience, because there's 0% chance I can have the same personal experience, much less be ahead in it enough to give every client an answer to everything. That's why we get educated and trained, is because it's not about experience. It's about technique. It's about learning how to draw something out of them rather than giving them something out of us.
Right. Yeah. How to ask the right questions, how to be present, in the most, efficient way that we can for them.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really what it's taught me.
So tell me something that you do to take care of yourself.
I'm a huge advocate for self-care. It's something that was not always easy for me to do. One of the things that I love is I'm a Capricorn, so I'm an earthy person, so I love getting into nature.
Okay. Tell me what, like, Capricorn is, what range is that?
Oh, I believe you mean like month wise.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I know just enough about Enneagram to be dangerous and not enough to be helpful. And I know even less about the signs, the star signs and
Yeah,
stuff.
I think it's somewhere around the beginning of December until like I think like the first week in January. I'm
Okay. Okay.
not positive. My birthday is 4 days after Christmas, so I'm right on the edge.
Okay.
But yeah, I am very big into grounding and earth and everything like that. So when some of my best self-care is just taking myself into, nature and embodying myself in it all, where I
Mm-hmm.
can basically like take the weight of the world off of my shoulders, put it on the back burner for whatever time period and just breathe.
Has your ability to do that been affected because of the pandemic?
Actually, since interesting question with that, I actually have gotten to do it more since the pandemic. It's actually,
Oh.
yeah, I've always been big into it and it's always been such a key component in my life, but actually the pandemic has actually made me tap into it more because I've actually had more time to do it and not and slowing down the busyness of life has made me realize how much more important that is right
Mm-hmm.
now.
Mm-hmm.
And it brings me to a place of calm that just helps me be able to be more to honestly be more present in myself
Mm-hmm.
and with the people in my life.
Yeah. Yeah. I could see that. I think that we're in this place right now. So, I mean, I don't know when the pandemic officially like started, but I do have a countdown on my phone that says the last time I was in my office, and that was 126 days ago.
Oh,
So
you would never think that.
I
It's
know,
been that
right?
long.
But I think we're in this point now where if you haven't had to reckon with this before, you certainly are now. I think a lot of us went into this kind of social distancing thing thinking, it'll be a couple weeks. So like I'll feel it, but it'll be like, I don't know, like a person trying to quit smoking. Like if I can get past a couple weeks, everything will go back to normal. I'll feel fine. It'll be great. And I think we're right now, everybody, especially because cases have gone back up, we're getting this kind of, I mean, I would say second swell, but like Fauci even said, it's not a second swell. The first one never went away.
Yeah.
So people are starting to reckon with, oh shoot. So this might be something that I can't just wait out.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that people are starting to kind of come back to that place of curiosity of how do I exist in this world? Like, because I can't get back to the
That
old
world.
world. Yeah. And
Mm-hmm.
so the self-care that I employ may need to look a little different, or it may need to, I need to maybe investigate, what's actual self-care for me and not just treat yourself. Like self-care as in like not retail therapy, like getting that new whatever it
Right.
is, but like how do I really connect with and refresh myself? And I
And
think this is like, it's making people discover the true ways to do that.
yeah, and that's what it's done for me. I mean, when I'm in nature, I come back to me, the whole me. It's not like a short little, super, oh, I'm going to go shopping. I
Yeah.
mean, like it's for me, it's nature because I get into it and then I can really, my whole mind, body, soul
Yeah.
thing.
You can connect with yourself better.
I connect with myself so much better when I'm out in nature. I think for me, it's the silence.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I know when I first started, my entry into mindfulness was through something my therapist asked me to practice called thought observance. And it was like 30 minutes of silence a week, but it had to be together. So I couldn't be like, oh, 2 minutes today and 5 minutes tomorrow and whatever. And it was
Yeah.
really learning how to suss out what voices in my head are me, what are other things, and you
Mhm.
had to let the pond water in the mayonnaise jar settle in order to be able to do that. So it had to be silence. It had to be no input. And I
Mhm.
remember at the beginning that was, I don't want to say challenging. It was like terrible and murder, and songs that I hadn't heard in 10 years would start playing as loud as they could inside of my head.
Yeah.
You know, it was as if my brain was fighting me, like, oh, no, nothing to see here. Don't, don't come any closer. But
Silence used to be so uncomfortable for me. I mean,
mhm,
even when I started out as a therapist and in the room when there would be silence, I would just want to like
mhm.
run away from that and fill the room with whatever, whatever that
Because
I could.
because we tell ourselves nothing's happening when there's silence, but the truth is
Right.
something could be happening inside of the client that's so important.
Mm-hmm.
So we just got to let it keep going. So typically, like the last question I ask folks is, if somebody has connected with you or they feel like they could connect with you and they want to be your client, how do they get a hold of you to see you? But I mean, the last time that we chatted, you were in a different state. And so you were working towards getting back on the licensure track. But as we talked earlier, you kind of said, hey, some new things have developed. So tell me about what you're into right now and what it is. And if people want to get a hold of you to engage in it, how they can do it.
Yeah. So my background is in marriage and family therapy. That's what I went for my master's for. And that is definitely something I'm so passionate about and still want to be able to achieve my license. And I'm working towards that. But yes, I ended up finding another part of that was just very in sync with it. And it was coaching. So what I love about coaching is the fact that it goes along with therapy so well, and for me as a person, because I'm almost kind of like a natural coach and therapist together. And it's hard because people ask me what is coaching. I'm a certified holistic life coach. And when I tell people that I'm a holistic life coach, they're like, oh goodness, well, what is that? And I tell them, I'm like, it's kind of like marriage and family therapy. It's looking at your life as all parts, not just one piece of it, all the moving parts and how they all fit together. And that's basically, like, I like to think of wellness. There's so many parts of wellness that we work on to find a balanced life. And so what I like about coaching is the fact that it's just a different approach than therapy. It's really not, as a whole, it's really not different. You're still having that relationship with the client, but you're using more of what I like to kind of say a solution focused kind of approach, but in a
Is
different way.
coaching more directive than therapy?
I would say yes. Where in therapy, we focus on past patterns. We dive into that, a little bit more and trying to kind of sometimes find out family history, things like that. Where with coaching, we don't really dive into that. It is more directive and more solution focused and kind of finding out where the client is presently.
Mm-hmm.
And then, okay, well, where are we now? Where do we want to be?
That sounds like it might be a little bit closer to what your concept of therapy was before becoming a client and becoming trained.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So holistic coach. So if somebody, if their ears perked up hearing that, what would be something, or what are the things that you offer? So if they want to engage in that, they would know, okay, cool, that'd be a good fit. Let me do that.
Yeah, some of the things I offer is I'm a very experiential, person. So even as a therapist, I did a lot of experiential techniques, and I do that as well as a coach, but we do it a little bit differently, where we do more of outside kind of activities. We do a lot of, like, I will share this free nugget with everybody. One of my favorite things that I like to do with clients that are having trouble with letting go, like just letting go in general, whether it's grief, a job loss, a relationship, whatever the case is, just life. We do an exercise where we put those things that need to be let go into a balloon, a helium balloon, and we go outside and we actually release it.
Mm-hmm.
which I love. And I've had a couple clients do that. And I ask them all the time, like while they're writing them down and while they're putting them in the balloon and then letting it go, I'm like, what is that? What is that like for you?
Mm-hmm.
And they're just like, it is so empowering because I feel like I'm watching it go.
Mm-hmm. And I've heard of people that practice EMDR doing that as a visualization,
Mm-hmm.
but to have the physical component to it, I think is very, very powerful.
Yeah. And I think, like when I think of holistic, I think of just mind, body, soul,
Mm-hmm.
where sometimes we just don't get into all those pieces. But with the kind of style of coaching that I do, I look at all of it. I'm like, how are you talking to yourself? How are you talking with the people in your life? How are you doing all these things?
Mm-hmm.
And then we look at all those different things.
Integration.
Mm-hmm. We look at all of it together.
So if somebody wants to engage in holistic coaching, how do they get a hold of you for that?
Yeah, well, they can follow me on Instagram or on Facebook. So on Facebook, they can find me just my name, Amie Steinbach, and they can follow me on there. Can always message me on there.
Very cool. I love that. Well, Amie, thank you so much for coming back on the show. It is, I would say that it's been great, but just the ability to see you has made it that much more past great that like, I don't know if I want to go back to just doing them audio. This is awesome. This is so much better.
Yeah, I really enjoyed being able to see you in person and kind of in person.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much for coming back. Thanks so much for joining me this week in the theater. I'll make sure I save a seat for you and a friend next week. Let's raise the lights, lower the curtain, and say that for this week, the theater is closed.